Hi, everybody. How you doing today? Another week in technologies. Our friend Mr. Keefe is lost. Don't know where he is. Armando is somewhere here in the Amazon River. And with us we have David and Steve. Steve, how you doing today?
Good. How are you this morning?
I'm a little bit slow in starting this morning. I miss Chris not being on. It kind of threw me off. But, we're here. David, the silhouette, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm sitting here at my mother-in-law's house up in Oneida, New York.
Actually,
By
don't even.
Turning Stone Casino, and I'm in a weird little kind of sunroom with sun all around me, but none coming in.
Yeah, I
So
don't
it's
even
creating
think.
some unusual lighting. I kind of have that evil scientist thing working for me.
Oh, right. Isn't that where they make French fries?
Oneida.
Same thing.
Oh,
That's what
nice.
it does.
Oneida Silverware. That's its claim to fame.
So let's talk about cloud computing as we always do, and open up with the enterprise news of the week. What should we talk about first, Steve? Should we talk about Mark?
Let's talk about Mark. That's interesting stuff.
So I don't know if you guys remember about, I guess, 2 years ago now?
Yeah, maybe 2.5, 3.
Wow, are you getting old or what? So, HP, the CEO of HP was Mark Hurd. Mark Hurd is a very interesting guy because he did get things done. I think he put HP back on the map, which is no small feat because HP is in troubled area. And then something happened that we don't know what happened, but he was let go. They cited some misspending, some expense management. Was that the whole thing, Steve?
Yeah, there was something about misrepresented expense reports had taken I think maybe his then admin with him, or had hit on somebody. I can't remember. There was some
There's
alleged,
some sordid story.
yes, alleged misconduct as part of that as well. I don't think they proved it, but yeah, that was certainly part of it.
Well, that's just it, right? It was just weird. It was just one of those things that nobody really understood what happened, and he was gone.
Yep.
And now he's back.
Well, his friend hired him right off the bat there, and he went to work at Oracle with. He was in charge of something.
Did we know what?
I don't remember what he was in charge of, but now he's the CEO of Oracle.
Yeah,
He's a deal maker. I mean, Mark Hurd is a deal maker. He knows everybody in the industry. He's been around the industry for a long time. He can make things happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he's definitely a mover and a shaker.
Right. So, now they want to get into cloud. So they want to get into cloud, but it's a real crowded space at this point, isn't it? Especially at the layer with Amazon in it, with Google in it, with everybody and their uncle is in it. I mean, you got out of cloud, didn't you, Steve?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Microsoft's in it.
Sorry.
Amazon, everybody, right? And both Amazon and Microsoft have partnerships with Oracle where they're already, they're well publicized. Partnerships about putting Oracle applications in their cloud. So this is kind of an interesting turn that Oracle has taken, kind of deciding they need their own cloud. Yeah, very similar to Cisco, in their announcement a few months back. I thought they were late to the game. Now these guys are really late to the game.
Cisco to me is a really interesting play because I think that what they're doing is they're building a franchise around cloud.
Mm-hmm.
But do we know anything more about the cloud offering for Oracle and how it differs from like Amazon?
I've only seen a little bit. They're announcing it at Oracle World, so there's not a whole lot of detail out there about it, other than it's supposed to be more of an infrastructure as a service, as well as enable you to put your database and Oracle applications in the cloud and kind of eliminate or call it commoditize the licensing component of it, right? So you pay for the cloud, you don't pay for the database licenses.
So let's go to our roving reporter, David.
Yes.
Out in the field.
So what I saw was interesting is it looks like they're also looking to launch a PaaS too.
Mm-hmm.
So platform as a service, and I just find it to be unusual because Oracle's traditionally made their money either by buying companies like Sun Microsystems for their big iron and their software and their virtualization, and then you've got the Oracle databases, which has been their claim to fame, which are basically, your big bad boy, very, very expensive databases and parallel servers and all those types of technologies, right? Now you're going to take that and extrapolate something that's clearly built for high performance scientific financial services and then put another layer on it so you can run it inside of a cloud environment. I personally don't see how those dots connect. I'm sure they've got a master plan of how, but I don't see it. And also when you go to a PaaS environment, you are then taking it out several layers even further, because in a PaaS you have no control over the underlying infrastructure. You're basically choosing your tool chain and building your app, and you're at the mercy of whatever's underneath it to get you the performance that you need to tweak it. I can't imagine many developers and system admins being comfortable with that. So I don't really know where they're going with this.
Yeah, and let's also talk about one thing here. So, I still don't understand why they bought Sun. Steve, I don't know if you have a better, clearer thing on that, other than the fact that they own Java.
Yeah, I still think that's the only reason they bought them, just to keep the Java.
What about MySQL?
Well, I thought that they bought Sun to help out his other buddy, right? Who owned Sun when Larry bought it? Was that still?
I think it was still McNeely. Yeah.
Scott McNeely, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I heard he was in trouble with the company, right?
Well, I thought it was also because there's a lot of the underlying Oracle applications that are built on Java, and they didn't want somebody else to get it and put their app stack at risk.
Yeah, that was a weird one from me. So we'll have to see what happens here. I just see things happening differently, and I see that I always see things happening differently. But I also see the space is getting really, really crowded, and I think that there's either going to have to be somebody failing or somebody consolidating. Like, to me, Rackspace is in trouble.
Yeah.
Did they just lose the CEO there?
They lost their CEO. They brought back one of their old board members to be a CEO. They put themselves out on the market, and then literally just last week they announced they're going to take themselves off the market and try and refocus as a channel play, similar to SoftLayer, IBM SoftLayer.
Yes. You know what? We didn't talk about that. What is IBM doing in the cloud space? I mean, I know that there's a whole bunch of things coming up, and wasn't there like a teaser coming up from them too?
Well, IBM's. I'm work very closely with them over at Push Technologies. They're one of my largest partners, and basically what IBM's done is they acquired SoftLayer. And SoftLayer is an infrastructure as a service cloud environment. What's neat about it is you can kind of have your own hardware. So it's more than just having cloud. They do some really unique things with how they deploy. So they're kind of the anti-Amazon cloud because they have the opposite approach, because you actually could figure out where your stuff is, which appeals to more enterprise customers. Additionally, at the end of July this year, they rolled out something called Bluemix. And Bluemix is their platform as a service offering, but what's really interesting about that is it's kind of diametrically opposed to everything that IBM has been.
Diametrically opposed?
Hey, I'm sitting here in the dark, so...
Diametrically opposed.
Opposite. Anyways, so basically, I've got to have a little person interpreting for me here on a little mini screen. But anyway, so basically what they've done is they've used some of the Cloud Foundry toolchain that's out there that powers SoftLayer. They added their own little PaaS layer on top of it in their own marketplace. And the reason why they're doing this is they have this thing called the Bluemix and the Bluemix Garage. And these two groups are tied together, pretty much the same thing. And the goal is to get developers of startups and newer type of companies to go build using the IBM ecosystem and IBM partner ecosystem to build their apps on their platform as a service. This way it generates more traffic for SoftLayer. consumes more IBM services, and gives IBM a chance as an enterprise monolithic company to get into some of these smaller companies that normally wouldn't consider working with IBM because they think they couldn't get the time of day from them or they'd be too expensive. So it's a major pivot for them in how they're going to market. So it is pretty interesting.
So that's interesting, Dave. So do you think that maybe some of that is Oracle's play too? Because they've always kind of suffered at the small and mid-market level. Right.
That's exactly why I think they're doing it. But again, the stuff they do is such, I mean, big iron's probably not the right term for it, but it's not the wrong term either. It's just so expensive, and the cost of entry for Oracle stuff is so high. I'm just not sure how they're going to be able to execute on that at a price point that's going to make sense for, the next LinkedIn or eBay coming up.
So help me out a little bit. When you're saying that people can use their own hardware, doesn't that
it's not your own hardware. You're using their hardware, but you're basically getting your own. It's almost like a virtual private server environment as opposed to a cloud. So think it's more hosting than cloud, even though it's cloud.
So I was going to say, so it's just a provisioning layer on top of your own stuff, of the stuff that you own.
No, their stuff.
The stuff that you're renting.
Right. You're renting it like you do in a hosting model. So it's kind of a hybrid offering that gives people that have that server hugger mentality the comfortableness of being able to have their own, they're saying, that's mine, that's where my stuff lives, and have a better idea of the underlying architecture.
So it's a co-location for 2015?
I would say, yeah, it's closer to say, yeah,
right.
It's more accurate.
Yeah,
but it's an interesting model, though. It is interesting. It's good stuff. I've been working with my engineering team here, and these guys seem to be really happy with it. We're working with most of the major cloud players out there right now. So
when you're saying that they're doing a different tier of service for different tier of customer, are you saying that top layer is saturated?
I'm not saying that the layer is saturated. I'm saying that if you're a startup and you've got a neat technology that you're building, I mean, when you and I have talked about this several times with some other crazy ideas that we were kicking around in the past.
Right, crazy ideas.
Yeah, crazy ideas. Where's the first place that we think about going? We always think about Amazon, right? We're going to go build an EC2 instance. We get a micro instance, a near-free instance. Or even now, Microsoft now has their really cheap block storage where it's becoming so commoditized and inexpensive, you can basically run little mini Microsoft environments if you're like hooked on the Microsoft world. Right. So you've got a lot of options out there where you could basically get almost free kind of compute power when you need it in the cloud. And if you're trying to start a company, you can throw a server up, use it, build something around it, see if you can generate some traffic, and it's a perfect environment to incubate new businesses and new technologies. So these other players like Oracle and IBM, they're missing the boat if they can't get that business. Because as soon as you start building your infrastructure inside of an Amazon, you're probably going to stay with an Amazon unless you have problems.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Anyways, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think you're right, David. It's going to be hard for some of these people to change. Off a platform. I think intrinsically all of these cloud platforms, at least today, right? Once you adopt a platform, you're kind of stuck on that platform, right?
For the most part, especially if you're optimizing for the platform. That's why I think the idea of Bluemix from IBM and this mystery PaaS from Oracle is interesting because it's a way to get you at least partially into the ecosystem, but not with the cost of entry that you would have with going out and buying a license to an Oracle database or to some of the larger IBM products that are out there.
Yeah. Well, I think Herd said this week too that part of the reason they're doing this is to compete with like Workday and Salesforce, right?
Yeah.
But that's another interesting one where, I mean, those are both platforms that were built for the cloud from the ground up. Right.
Yeah, but they're not. I mean, like, I read the article about the Workday and Salesforce. Right? Those are, but Salesforce probably does a lot more than would let you know. But aren't those more like SaaS more than cloud?
Yeah, I would consider them more SaaS than cloud.
I see. I've got to disagree with you because they started as SaaS. They built themselves up as a software as a service, right? So almost like a Gmail where you just go and use it, which was Salesforce's. But then they've now like have this whole Dreamforce and Force. That's more API driven, right? In order to access it, you've got to get into all those application programming interfaces from Salesforce. And now they have an ecosystem out there that's running on the Salesforce cloud.
Yeah, I would definitely say Salesforce is more PaaS-like than Workday. I think Workday is still more of a
SaaS,
right?
Yeah.
Straight out service, exactly.
Right. But you can certainly build things on top of Salesforce now. There's a lot of companies doing that.
You know, I was talking to one of my clients this week, and somebody's using Salesforce as their ticketing system.
Yeah, I know a couple of clients doing that.
That was the first time I ever came across that.
We did it at Canonical.
Yeah. It's
a bunch of when I was there. It worked really well, and it was neat because as a sales guy, you could see all the tickets inside all of your account records.
Yeah. I guess that's what their mentality was. Let's go back to talking about Amazon for a second, because there was another article, Steve, that you passed on to me.
Yes, Amazon rebooting their infrastructure this weekend. It started on Friday.
Like a movie. Does it sound like a movie? The Amazon reboot.
The Amazon reboot. It's interesting because they have never, I think, at least publicly announced that they were going to go through such an extensive reboot. They sent out a notice to all their customers on Wednesday, attributing it to a problem or an issue that needed to be patched in the Zen hypervisor. I think there's a lot of speculation that's, especially due to timing, that it's related to the shell shock, virus, or the shell shock kind of problem that they needed to fix. So
and it's pretty systemic too, right? It was all of the availability zones, not just one.
It was all availability zones. It was all of EC2. It was.
Do we know what they're using for hardware?
No, they're very closed about what they use. I mean, there's some speculation that they've done like Facebook and built some of their own open.
Yeah, aren't they part of the Open Compute Alliance?
They are part of it, right?
So they may be using some of that stuff for some of the workloads, but I couldn't imagine them running all the workloads on it.
Yeah, but I've heard that they use some Dell. I've heard that they use some Cisco, but it's all speculation. I don't think there's anything published on it.
Because in the beginning, wasn't most of the, if not all of it, because I remember you and I worked on this when we were at Accenture. Then I remember what it was called back then. The Microsoft Cloud was all HP.
Yeah, it was all HP back then.
Even the people working on it were HP.
Yeah.
That goes back eons, probably like 10 years.
Yeah, easily 10 years.
Was it even a cloud back then?
It was more cloud than anybody else had at the time.
Yeah, it was more of a true cloud, I'll give it that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what that's going to do with a major reboot like that. I wonder if that's going to come back with all these little tiny companies working on it.
Right. Well, I think it underscores part of the reason why more and more of these enterprises haven't put, to David's point, critical applications out in the cloud, right? When you can't predict, right? All of these larger organizations need some predictability, right? I mean, can you imagine going to a large enterprise and say, hey, we're rebooting all of your infrastructure this weekend, right? And just
you can't.
You just can't do that, right? And I think that's why you've seen some of these other players, like some of the gaming sites. What's the big gaming site out there? That just decided to.
There's all of them, right? They're all on EC2. My son Michael's a big gamer, and I noticed that all these things are going up and down.
Yeah, but you hear more and more about these sites trying to bring some of their infrastructure back in, presumably to get around these kind of issues, right? To get a little more control back.
Well, you know what's funny? Back when OpenStack first started and I was over at Canonical, what we were doing back then was a lot of our clients we actually built backup clouds for on their own hardware. So we repurposed part of their data center, built them an infrastructure as a service cloud.
Wait, slow down on that one. Give me that one more time.
What we used to do is we would, and this is still common, you'd build a hybrid cloud. So you would have an infrastructure as a service cloud like Amazon where you ran workloads on, and then you would have a backup cloud in your own data center. So if the public cloud failed for you for those workloads, you'd be able to roll back over to your own, or vice versa.
Whenever I hear people that I'm in a hybrid cloud, I mean, there's reasons for it. To me, a hybrid cloud is just a private cloud somewhere, or a co-location kind of thing. It's like getting half pregnant or putting your toe in the cold water.
Well, you can look at it that way, but think about it like this. Let's say I'm a scientific organization.
No, don't get me wrong. I see the need for it, so continue, please.
Yeah, so let's say I'm a university or some sort of scientific organization doing genomics mapping.
Sure.
It's a real use case I did for someone in the past.
I did that this morning.
I figured that. So basically, imagine you've got this workload in your data center. You only have so many free servers you could use in your VMware environment, which is what most people have now, right? So you've got your data center. You're going to spin up this workload, and you're running it, but you need to go from your 60 servers to 600 servers, but you only need those other servers for about the evening to run this workload in order to get it done.
Right.
So what they've done is they've designed these environments that they can use what they call a DevOps tool and basically go out and spin up all these servers in Amazon, run the workloads using their compute power, get the results back, then shut them all down again and only pay for their usage when they needed it. But the application itself is being run from their data center in their own environment. So that's a pretty cool use of cloud where you're just getting compute on-demand power as needed, and then you're tearing it back down again.
Yeah, I don't consider that a hybrid cloud, though.
Then what do you consider it?
Well, to me, that's just cloud computing, right?
But it's hybrid because you have your own infrastructure, and then you're going out to a public cloud to use the rest of it.
Yeah, no, on a temporary basis. I see the usage of hybrid cloud in a different way, but I totally understand what you're saying. Hey, good morning, Chris. How you doing?
Morning.
Good morning, guys. Sorry, overslept.
That's
okay. I had an emergency at work.
Yes. Yes. The damn genome pool wasn't working well, right?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
So I'm very concerned about what the rebooting means. So, for example, I have some space on there, but because the way that I get my space from Amazon, I was not notified.
Ah.
Because you steal it, right?
So you buy your space from a reseller.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, there is one thing that I read that I thought was a brilliant idea. I apologize if you guys have already mentioned it, but an article I read suggested that you should go out and reboot your servers right now, because that can get you the new stuff, and you can do it on a controlled basis rather than just having Amazon do it whenever they feel like it.
Oh, so you're saying that they're not just killing everything at the same time? They have some methodology?
Yeah, they're doing it over 4 days. They've got windows from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday.
To me this is going to be interesting, because even with your stuff, Chris, with all the social media stuff that's out there, all these little tiny companies that are out there, I wonder if they're going to come back up.
I can't speak for the others,
Even allowed to speak for yours about that one?
I can tell you that, Sprinkler will definitely come back up. We've got 2 parallel instances running in 2 zones in an active configuration. So, unless something really bizarre goes wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris's point is interesting, right? I mean, you've got a huge change management aspect of this. It's interesting, you're right. They recommend you to go out and reboot your own stuff, right? But how many of these new players out there have really planned for some kind of, planned reboot, right?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. They don't. They built it on Amazon. They expected it never, ever to go down. And if they chose multiple availability zones, the reason why they did that is so it would never, ever go down.
Yeah.
But, we've seen the history of how many times have organizations like Netflix and other places have been impacted by outages in the cloud.
Yeah.
Well, but Netflix doesn't have that issue anymore, right? So Netflix has got appliances on most ISPs now, so they don't have to. I mean, even if you get that reboot, you might have some authorization issues, but they don't have to go and kill them off and come back up.
Well, what they've done is your organizations like Sony with PlayStation and Xbox and Netflix, all these web type services, they've gone to these traditional hosting providers like I used to work for in the past, and they've coloed their own content management servers essentially and gaming servers at these different locations. So they're not just relying on this whole cloud infrastructure. They've actually gone and pushed everything out to the edges of the networks to get this content that you need to interact with so at such high speed right next to you.
Yeah, Netflix did it, I think, for that, well, for a couple of reasons. But one is the net neutrality piece that really doesn't affect Netflix because, for example, Cablevision, well, Optimal Online now, sorry, they have an appliance that has all the movies or a good set of movies in their location, right? So you don't have to go over the web, over the backbone to get your movies. You just go right to your ISP. And most ISPs have those, and Netflix
Right.
pays for them.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to come back to, we said what about these, these smaller companies, these newer, startups and all. From when we were a startup, I think they're iterating software fast. They're pushing releases every couple of weeks and things like that. So they're probably booting their servers very regularly, I would think. I could be completely wrong, and I'm sure that there are some that do and some that don't. But
Hey, Steve,
if we're talking about the enterprise space, as a former startup, now a medium-sized company, I guess.
That's twice.
I haven't mentioned Sprinkler's name.
Yeah, but you caught that, Steve, right? When
Yeah.
we were a startup.
Yes.
Yes.
Now that we've joined,
We've got 600 employees. I can't call it a startup anymore. Anyway,
he's at the table with IBM now.
not quite. We'll get there. Give me time.
And Oracle.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100 billion's the target. We'll discuss that later. But now I completely lost the thread of what
He was explaining that he was explaining how you're no longer a startup, so not rebooting your servers every 5 minutes.
If you're targeting the enterprise space as a startup, you have to mature your infrastructure much more quickly, I think, than if you're a startup targeting consumers. Because the enterprise is going to say, okay, show me your plan, show me your disaster recovery plan, show me your business continuity plan, show me your security plan, show me how you handle, software development lifecycle, show me all this stuff, and you have to mature that aspect of your company, or at least document that you've matured it.
Yeah.
A lot sooner, I think, than a consumer, a B2C facing startup would.
Yeah.
That was my point.
So you're not a startup anymore, is that what you're saying?
Oh, well, now you bring it up.
So is there a magical ruler that says once you reach this point you're not a startup anymore?
Well, the SBA says it's less than 500 people.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Good facts. The fact of the day.
Is there a timeline that goes along with that as well?
Other startups start yelling at you.
Oh,
You're not a startup anymore. Kind of stuff. So.
That's awesome. Any closing remarks, Steve? Don't get on the cloud. Get on the cloud.
Get on the cloud cautiously. Right?
Wait,
I think
should
that's
move to the cloud.
move to the cloud, right? But plan your move to the cloud.
Do you think it's judicious to have two cloud vendors?
I do. I have always been of the philosophy, if you think back just to your basic networking, right? If you really wanted the maximum amount of reliability in your network, you generally went with two different carriers because you knew they had two different infrastructures, right?
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, the cloud is going to be the same way. People are going to go, they're going to have stuff in Azure and they're going to have stuff on Amazon, right, to balance out the risk.
So there's companies out there now that are doing like they're kind of brokering your cloud into multiple sites, like to the point that you don't know, right? So
Right.
you're just buying from them. But I think that there's always a single point of failure. Because even dual path, you still have the load balancer in the middle. You still have all those things. There's always something that everything peers down to. Steve, am I wrong on that?
Nope. You always have that last mile connectivity, right? The single strand of fiber or whatever. That's the point you can't get around.
Yeah, it's unrealistically expensive to go build and be able to have that level of redundancy where there is no single point of failure.
I think it depends on what you're doing, right? If you're NASA, and you got to cover the space shuttle, then yeah, you've got to build two complete, entirely independent networks, and one's 1,000 miles away from the other, and stuff like that.
And separate power grids and all that other stuff that goes along with it.
I think that when you throw all that kind of stuff in there, you can get away from a single point of failure, but for most people, it's not economic. The return on investment isn't there, because you got to talk about millions of dollars a second kind of a thing before it starts costing.
Yeah.
So has anybody ever been to the NASA data center?
Yeah.
You've been to the NASA data center? Seriously?
Well, yeah.
So
kind of.
Right. So they have because of our background, I forgot. And I'm trying to think right now.
Can't tell you how. I'll have to kill you.
Right. And Chris, I'm trying to say as much as possible here. So you have multiple data centers, more than 2.
Yes.
But if one data center goes down, what it comes down to is you can actually physically switch your console to the other data center. And it's done with a switch.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to give you this kind of picture. I'm trying to feel.
Got a giant red lever that they just goes to a wall and they pull it and moves it down like in an old sci-fi movie.
It's got black and yellow tape over it. Don't pull this.
and there's a guy going beep beep and turns it down.
Exactly.
But even at that level, you have one switch that you physically manually move.
Yeah.
It's just a single point of contact there.
The way that most of the government works, I think, is defying convention, let's say.
Yes.
I think it'd be a better thing to take a look at how PayPal or Amazon or Netflix or one of those guys avoids a single point of failure.
Yeah.
Because there you're talking like real money, Let's talk stock exchanges and things like that.
Well, let's look at UPS. I mean, I'm waiting for a package and I got a notification that a package shipped on Saturday morning from UPS's notification service. I went to click the link. It was down for half the day yesterday. I couldn't get the tracking information.
That was probably Amazon.
Yeah.
Probably. I'm sure it was somewhere in the middle there, but basically, I had internet, just couldn't get there. So.
I can tell you that I was talking to a major customer last week, and they talked about how they started using the Sprinkler platform to listen for their corporate, the corporate users on their network reporting outages in a building or something like that. And they found that could be up to 15, 20, 30 minutes faster than their monitoring systems in identifying failures.
Yeah, the monitoring system have an interesting problem, right? So, Steve, you and I did know this one well. Most outsourced companies that monitor networks, for example, I would say a good percentage is they find out that something's down from somebody calling before they look at the system and see it.
Yeah, it's a little surprising.
Especially when you're talking about a big network, right?
Yeah.
You start seeing tickets.
If they lose 300 or 500 people, it's not necessarily going to jump out and scream and tell them that.
Right.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I think we can put a fork in this week's podcast. Join us next week when we talk more about enterprises, news, technology, and things that have happened. In the meantime, you can always go look at our site, Techreact.com. It's right there, Techreact. Spelled correctly this time, I think, Steve.
Excellent.
Yeah, you fixed it.
Yes, I was trying to talk about my other business.
Is it a startup? No, sorry.
No wonder why our traffic spiked when you changed the name.
It's Colorado-based.
So, give me suggestions. We actually put out the link this week to the whole circle. You can join us and be online with us. We'll get better at that. Give us some feedback. Let me know what you think about this program on Google Hangout. If you're listening to us on Blog Talk Radio, you can't see how good Chris looks today.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, and have a great week.